Okay, we are live. I'm Joe Terosian in a modified Ram cave today. I had to move some things around, but you can still see my Ram helmet there, my other things there, the football and all that stuff. Anyway, welcome to RamView. I'm Joe Terosian, and this is our Friday show. And feeling a little naked because I don't have my background. I don't have my hat. I am wearing my Eric Dickerson shirt. I hope you can see it. If I sit up straight, maybe that's what I'll do. And so we're here to talk about the Rams and talk about as we close out this weekend and or into this weekend and talk about what the Rams are doing, where they're at as we move closer and closer to the start of the new season, the fiscal season, the technical start of the 2022 season, which is March 16th. I posted it from the Ram Cave today. You're seeing some releases already taking place. I thought it was interesting earlier this week. The Giants released Kyle Rudolph, one of my favorite players of all time, because he got away with that push off against the Saints. Because I hate the Saints. I'm not a big Viking fan either. But he was released by the Giants as well as Devontae Booker. And so you're just going to see that as we move closer and closer and as the Rams have to get under or get at the 208 mark, $208 million for the salary cap. And I think they're 21 rocks over. But through restructure and releases and retirements, they should be fine. They're not going to be as strapped as they've been in the past. And it'll just be interesting to see how it plays out. But with the release of Kyle Rudolph, I thought it was interesting is that you have to get ready for the sting, right? The 3 R's are coming. Restructure, right? Restructure and release and maybe retirement for some of these players as the Rams talk about gearing it up to run it back, so to speak. Almost in some ways, when you're talking about the Rams going to next season, it feels like you got your title, right? And I know we want more, but the cold reality is that nobody repeats. I mean, not for close to 20 years since the Patriots did it, following the 03-04 seasons. And but the Rams are in a prime position, and it's interesting to watch and see what they can do. And so I'm going to be talking Rams, cornerbacks, NFC West, and I'm going to play this little thing called What Comes to Mind. And I'm going to do it with the NFC today. I'll do it with the AFC next week. But since we're Ram fans, I think we got more of an emotional tie to the NFC. And what it is, I'm going to say the team name, and I'm going to ask, what's the first thing that comes to mind? And I'll share it too. If a thought come to mind, please feel free to drop it in the comments box as we go from there. But looking at the Rams cornerback situation, okay, they're locked in with Jalen Ramsey. We know Darius Williams is likely to look for new ground, right? He's likely to. Well, he wants that contract, and he deserves that contract. He's going to be hitting 29 pretty soon, so this is his moment to make the money, and so watch where he goes in the free agent market. We talked about it yesterday. The Rams lost 6 assistant coaches. 3 of the offensive coaches went to Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell, and then three other assistants went with Ejiro Evero, as he's the new DC in Denver. And Denver has cornerbacks, so I don't know if that's a place for D. Will to go. But take a look and keep your eye on him. Maybe going to Minnesota, maybe even Detroit because of the Brad Holmes connection. The other aspect of this is, what do the Rams have in-house? We know Jalen Ramsey's fine, but the Rams got clicks this year. Not great clicks, but they got clicks out of David Long Jr., Robert Rochelle, and Dante Dion. And Rochelle was a 4th-round pick a year ago, kind of was pressed into service. David Long Jr. Was a 3rd-round pick now 3 years ago. This was his 3rd year. And then Dante Dion was picked up off the ash heap. And honestly, through the center of the season, Dante Dion actually played the best ball. I think there's going to be a small market for Dante Dion, that he might have played himself into a contract to where he's not a fringe practice squad player going back and forth. If the Rams could find a way to keep him, that would be really helpful, and that would add a lot of depth because they still have another year with Long, and they have a couple more years left with Rochelle. And I think, when you look at Rochelle and how the Rams, how he was talked about in the draft last year, and then actually getting significant minutes this year, Rochelle has all the physical abilities that everybody just loves. And so you can't expect him to develop and come along further and more playing time. David Long Jr. is another one that's interesting. Is people were south on him, and I thought he got the hook too quick early in the season. Took him a while to come back because they went to Rochelle, they went to Dayon, and it wasn't until injuries that Long got back on the field, and he was very serviceable for the playoffs. And in fact, he had the pick six in in the first round of the playoffs. So I thought David Long played well. And also I thought the times where he was burned deep, the Rams had issues in the secondary. I don't want to say Taylor Rapp's name, but I'm going to say Taylor Rapp's name because the guy struggles in coverage. And there were a couple times there that Long was not given over the top help where it looked like he was expecting it. And I think he bore the burden of that. But I also think it was the burden of getting to work with Raheem Morris for all these cornerbacks. I thought we all thought the Rams were way too soft, way too passive early on, and far too passive. And we noticed as the season got towards late December and January, we noticed that the things began to tighten up a little bit, that they began to come up a little more, and there weren't these giveaways. And so I think it was probably a moment or a period where they had to get used to Raheem Morris and Raheem Morris's style. And if they could bring Dayon back and find a rotation, either Long becomes a starter, Rochelle. I imagine they're going to look at somebody in the draft. I don't know if they're going to look at somebody in free agency unless it really opens up in terms of somebody wanting to be here and fitting the right price. And we can look at that as the days and weeks go on. But they will be in the draft because if you're always drafting receivers, and everyone's drafting receivers every year now, teams are going to be drafting cornerbacks, and that's just a critical thing. So, but keep an eye on those corners because the Rams have great potential in Rochelle, solid work out of David Long Jr., and pleasant surprise out of Dante Dayon. But again, you want depth, and if Darius Williams leaves, that means two of those three guys, if they're all back, will have to be starters, and then that'll only leave one rotating in, and so in a dime package, so to speak. So you'll have to keep an eye on that. But I'm happy with those guys. I like those guys. I'm a little more concerned with the other safety spot, and you know who that is, and the Rams will have to make a decision there. But today we're talking about corners. When you look around the NFC, talking about the NFC West and other places, you got to feel really good about the Rams offseason. The Rams so far have had a terrific offseason. Tom Brady's retired. Kyler Murray's melted down in the desert. Aaron Rodgers is Zen Rodgers, and you don't know what he's doing. Frisco still has a quarterback issue in terms of transition because first they're going to deal Jimmy G. Now they can't deal Jimmy G because he's got a shoulder issue. And it looks like it's going to be Trey Lance, but are they really all bought in on Trey Lance right now? The Vikings are in transition. They got Kirk Cousins in his last year. The Redskins, the Commanders still don't have a quarterback. The Saints are in transition with Sean Payton stepping down. The Cowboys are about to release, according to what everybody is saying, they're about to release Amari Cooper. That's just unbelievable. But it also shows the distinction that Jerry Jones might be a multi-billionaire and own NFL franchises and corporations and everything. But it also lets you know is that he doesn't know football the way Les Snead does and the Rams. In terms of one, Ram owner doesn't meddle, but the second part is that the Rams signed their players to contracts that would be flexible, voidable years and different things. And now because of the kind of contract they gave someone like Ezekiel Elliott, which was the huge mistake, they give him this great contract and they can't move off of it. So he's the one that really should be released, but because of the hit they would take, it's not feasible and it doesn't help them the way it would help them if they released Amari Cooper because they got Randy Gregory, Connor Williams, Michael Gallup. They got so many people, Leighton Vander Esch. They got so many people up for free agency that they're in a mess in Dallas, and that was all fool's gold last year, as the Cardinals proved. The only game the Cardinals won down the stretch was in Dallas, and as San Francisco proved in the first round of the playoffs. So when you look at the NFC, this has been a great offseason for the Rams, and the Rams haven't done a thing yet. They haven't done one thing, but what's happening in the NFC is so much transition that it's really put the Rams in a good spot. I don't feel threatened by the Cardinals next year. I think Frisco will be trouble because Frisco is always trouble. But in terms of going to a level above where Jimmy G had them this year, not this year with Trey Lance, maybe next year with Trey Lance or in his third year, but not this year. I just don't. This year coming up in 2022, I don't see it. I can see maybe possibly a little resurgence in Seattle, but we'll talk about that. They're a bit hamstrung themselves in terms of what they want to do. And of course, I've been on the, even though I love the guy as a player, I don't know how Seattle keeps a guy like Bobby Wagner on the books. And again, as we move closer to March 16th, when the new season begins and teams have to be under the cap and they're going to want all that maneuverability, it'll be interesting to see how things play out in Seattle. In regards to Phoenix in Arizona and the Cardinals, what do you do? Well, if it's me, I'm looking to deal Kyle Murray. I don't want to give him what I saw today. I think somewhere was 6 years, $275 million. Is that the renegotiation that he wants? Is that getting paid? Is that the getting paid that he wants and he wants done immediately? Or possibly, what could he hold out or really give the Cardinals the stink eye? I say you got to let him go. I think if he's got this attitude, teammates are going to be turned off. I mean, you want to play for your guy. I think the Rams wanted to play for Matthew Stafford. I think people wanted to play for Tom Brady because they saw what he can do. I think people want to play for Dak Prescott because he's a super personality. He's a great person, and he's part of the team. But Murray is so bad at body language, and he really is a finger pointer. And you see that on the field, maybe not in the locker room, but you're going to say, Joe, you're not in the room. You don't know that. You can see it on the field. Anyone that's been around the field can read body language and know the quarterback who says that's my bad and the quarterback that says, no, man, it's on you. And Kyler Murray is the one that's on you. And do you want to give him 6 years? Do you want to be locked up to this guy? Man, if I was the Cardinals, I'd do something really bold and I'd call up the Broncos. The Broncos need a quarterback. I'd call up the Steelers before the Steelers draft Malik Willis. I'd call up anybody and see if I could move him because I want to get something for him now and get somebody who believes in him because I wouldn't have any belief in him. But I say that from the outside looking in. As a Ram fan, I say sign Kyler Murray. Give him the big fat money. Give him so much money that when Amari Cooper gets on the market, you can't afford him, right? This should be the moment. This should be the moment in time where they're not going to bring A.J. Green back. They got struggles with Chandler Jones, but they need to load up with weapons. And you get maybe an Amari Cooper on the other side of DeAndre Hopkins, and then you got something to work with there. You got two elite receivers. But unless Kyler Murray's come to play ball, right, and you give him all of his money up front, you're not going to have the money for an Amari Cooper, are you? If you're Amari Cooper, where are you going to go? You want to go someplace that's going to win, and I don't know if I want to go to. I don't know if I want to go to Arizona. There's just bad mojo there. It's a curse to be a Cardinal, and they got to sign their running backs. Chase Edmonds and James Conner are free agents, so this is not a good situation. And I think Phoenix is getting hot in Phoenix, so to speak. All right, I'm going to leave that there. We're at the 13-minute mark, and I didn't want to go too deep. I posted from the Ram Cave. It's at joetarosian.com, and there's a little bit of information there. The updated mock draft board that I'm compiling from other mock drafts all around. It's not my mock draft. It's not anyone's mock draft that I'm familiar with, but just getting a feel for names and positions that some of the experts out there are projecting the Rams need. That's all posted on joetarosian.com. Click on From the Ram Cave. This RamView will also be embedded in that a little bit later today, so you can check that out there. But in that, I also covered the career of Don Klosterman, and it's not necessarily a bio or feature piece. It's just a couple of paragraphs about who he was and what he did, and then it just gives a list of the deals he made. And my argument is that if the Rams ever develop a ring of honor, then Klosterman needs to be in it, and more than that. as they go back and Bill Cowher in the Hall of Fame, please. The NFL Hall of Fame needs to relook and revisit some veterans committee and take a look at Don Klosterman, because he was an amazing, amazing GM in the AFL and the NFL. And actually, I didn't write his USFL, but he built a great team with Express in the USFL, but got submarined because of terrible ownership and bad leadership throughout the league and such. So give that Don Klosterman thing a read if you're interested in Ram history. And because comes with Klosterman comes memories. And so I thought it would be kind of fun, and just to see if we could have some interaction here, if you want to leave comments. What are your first thoughts when you think of these teams? And like I said, just today, I'm going to do the NFC teams. But, Seahawks, 49ers, Cardinals, Saints, Falcons. What comes to mind when you say these teams? And I thought I'd start with myself, and I think of the Seahawks. My first thinking of the Seahawks is in 1979, the Rams were having a rough year, and they weren't dominating the West. They ended up winning the West with a 9-7 record. And of course, we know they ended up in the Super Bowl. But in a rough year where they're starting Jeff Rutledge, Ferragamo, Pat Hayden, they're even bringing in Bob Lee to play quarterback. Elvis Peacock goes down. McCutcheon's worn out. And Wendell Tyler steps up as the feature back. And there's just so much chaos. Carol Rosenblum dies. Georgia takes over. And there's so much stuff. But when the Rams went to Seattle in 1979, the Seahawks had a lot of energy, had a lot of life. Largent to Zorn. The Kingdom was loud. And I remember my brother and I thinking, this is going to be bad. Instead, the Rams defense stepped up and held the Seahawks to -7 total yards. It was one of the most dominant defensive performances I've seen. Not as flashy as the Bears swamping of the Patriots in the Super Bowl a few years later, but that Ram win in Seattle, where they held the Seahawks to -7. That always comes to mind when I think of the Seahawks. When the 49ers come to mind, I know this is going to sound really strange, but the Rams dominated the 49ers through my youth. When I was really young, when I came to the team, when I first started following the team in 72, 73, 74, the Rams just won all these games. And it was almost a given. They were always going to beat the 49ers. And so Ram games blacked out, of course, because it was at the Coliseum, the ridiculous NFL rules. And so we had to listen on the radio, but we got Dick Enberg. And we were at the park playing football. And I remember I was one of the younger guys, and we were with our church people, and they didn't let me be on the team because there was too much hitting going on. They didn't want an 11-year-old, or I was 11. They didn't want an 11-year-old getting stuck by 25-year-olds. And so I'm on the sideline, and I'm kind of listening to the Ram game. And Steve Nickemeyer, who is the brother of Nick Nickemeyer, who played for the Falcons, who beat the Rams with a bunch of field goals in 73. Steve Nickemeyer kicks a 54-yarder in the Coliseum that beats the Rams. And I think it's like the first time in like 6 years, or 5 seasons, the 49ers beat the Rams. That one always comes to mind when I see the 49ers play. When I see the Cardinals and Rams, I always think of the 75 playoff game. That one always comes to mind, where the Rams blew out early. Pick sixes by Bill Simpson, Jack Youngblood, a deep bomb to Harold Jackson, McCutcheon, Ron Jesse recovering a fumble. McCutcheon ran for 202 yards that day and was a conference record for a number of years. I don't think it is anymore. When I think of the Saints, I just think of bad days in Tulane Stadium and in New Orleans. Even when the Saints were terrible, anytime the Rams seemed to go to the Bayou, they always struggled there. It was just always a struggle. And so, yeah, I'm not a big Saints fan. I would say the second best memory of the Saints is the Flipper Anderson game in 88 or 89. I'm trying to remember that now. I think it was 88. And that Flipper Anderson game, if you remember, maybe you don't remember, was also the game where Dalton Hilliard was trying to block Kevin Green, and Kevin Green hurdled him into the Saints backfield, and that was pretty cool. So that's always one of my thoughts with the Saints. With the Falcons, it's really literally my first football memory of the Rams, 1972. It was the first day I ever went to church. I remember that. We got home, actually went to a neighbor's house, and I was watching the end of the Falcons beating the Rams 31-3. Tommy Novus had a pick six. And I just remember, I just sticks in my mind. The Rams lost 31-3. And it turned out, I've learned later, that was the Falcons' first victory over the Rams. The Cowboys, don't get me started. Good memories and bad memories. From Enberg calling out Harold Jackson's 4 touchdowns in 1973 in the first half, to the playoff loss in 73, the playoff loss in 75, the playoff victory in Dallas in 76, highlighted by Rusty Jackson, the punter, taking a safety and then spiking the ball as the Rams won that game 14-12. The Billy Waddy game in 79, the Eric Dickerson game in 85, the Rams win in 83 in Dallas, and then, of course, that awful NFC title game in 78. I was at the 75 one, 37-7. So, yeah, I got a lot of Cowboy memories. When it comes to the Eagles, I remember the 89 playoffs. That's what comes to mind when I think of the Rams and I think of the Eagles. I think of Clyde Simmons talking about how he was going to dominate the game, and the Rams went in there with Everett and Greg Bell and Ernie Zampese's offense and got the win. When I think of the Washington Redskins, because we haven't played the Commanders yet, right? I was at the playoff game in 74 where the Rams won, and we were sitting in the closed in, and behind us was a longtime George Allen fan, and he was declaring it was Allen's revenge. And then Isaiah Robertson picked off a pass and returned it, I think, 59 yards for a touchdown. And the Rams ended up winning that game, and the guy yelling Allen's revenge left to a shower of peanuts being thrown at him. Giants, of course, Flipper Anderson, right? Maybe a little bit Dwayne Crutchfield in the 84 playoffs, how they gave it to Crutchfield instead of Dickerson down by the goal line. But we'll let that slide for the playoff win in 89 in overtime where Flipper beat Mark Collins. That was special. Lions, I don't have too many memories except we got Ron Jesse from the Lions. And that was really good because Ron Jesse was one of my favorite players in the NFL when he was with the Lions, and I loved him with the Rams. I guess the negative memory would be the 1980 season opener where Billy Sims had his rookie season, his first game, and he had a great game, and the Lions were singing another one, Bites the Dust. But lo and behold, it was the Lions, and they were the masters of mediocrity in those days, and they never really went anywhere. Bears, Bears is hard because I don't have too many memories of the Bears. I remember the Rams winning there in 73, and when they won in 73, they iced the NFC West. And, of course, the NFC title game in 85. And, you could say that's a bad, the Rams lost. That was painful. The Bears were dominant. That was painful. But I think the most painful thing about that NFC title game in 85, played in January of 86, was Dieter Brock. If you ever had to watch Dieter Brock play quarterback, it's good that you're still a Rams fan, right? It was a tough go and such, but we move on, right? Life goes on. When I think of the Packers, I think of Fred Dreyer and 2 safeties in 1973 in the fourth quarter. Scott Hunter and Jim Delgado took them both down in the end zone in the same quarter, and that one was pretty cool. I do not have a memory of the Carolina Panthers. Nothing really stands out. A couple of this, a couple of that. I know there was a playoff game there, but the Panthers don't stand out. I just remember when we were the Greatest Show on Turf was kind of chugging along there pretty good. Seifert was the head coach for the Panthers, George Seifert, and they gave the Rams a couple of tough games. I think they had a fullback named Brad Collins, and he was a struggle. And, of course, the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are kind of they felt like a second team because we were so infatuated and we loved John McKay. And so everyone, I believe, out here was rooting for him. I can remember the Buccaneers playing here in 78 and the Coliseum cheering for the Buccaneers. I think Mike Ray had subbed in for Doug Williams, and the former USC quarterback Mike Ray subbed in. And he had some scrambles, and you could hear the Rams crowd cheering because they had this affection for John McKay. It was bittersweet in 79 to beat them because I wasn't a Buccaneers fan. I was a John McKay fan, Ricky Bell, Richard Wood, all those guys that ended up going to Tampa Bay, and the Rams beat them 9-0. And that's what I remember most. I know every Ram Buccaneer playoff game is just brutal, right? From the one this year to the one in 99 where Ricky Pearl made the catch to a 9-0 affair where no touchdown was scored in 79. And I do remember that game because it was like, that's the game that put the Rams in the Super Bowl. That was the game that when it was over, it was like, this is real. This is really happening. The Rams are in the Super Bowl. And so that's just some of that. If you have any thoughts on when you think of specific teams, please drop it in the box. Sometimes I think I'm alone, not in terms of comments, but sometimes you get so caught up in your appreciation for a team. Because honestly, for us, everyone says, well, why are you such a Rams fan? It's like, because they were our heroes when we were growing up. We grew up on a street where there were no dads. We grew up on a street where our role models were the athletes. Now, that wasn't fair to the athletes, because I do agree with what Charles Barkley said back in the 80s, that he's not a role model. But they were our role models. They were the male figures that we identified with, and so we became very close to them. And of course, in those days, as you're going to see if you read from the Ram Cave today, I put in bold the players that were acquired in Don Klosterman's tenure, and how many of them were required in 72, 73, and 74 that were still with the team in 1979 when they made it to the Super Bowl. And so it was like, as kids, we went on this journey from the age of 9 through high school. I was a Ram fan, age 8 on through. So I grew up from 8 years old to mostly through my high school career with Jack Youngblood, Jim Youngblood, Larry Brooks, and so they were our guys. And so they were our role models, and they were the ones we looked up to because of, where we grew up in our situation. So anyway, that's about it for today, for the weekend. I'm Joe Tarosian, and this has been RamView. And if you like what you saw, please hit like and subscribe, share with your friends. I want to say hi to my friend Rich, Richmond 95171, who was a big Colts fan, and I'll tell you my feelings about the Colts next week, Rich, and we'll go from there. But please, you can follow me at Twitter at JoeT13B, and same handle, JoeT13B on Instagram as well, and I'm on Facebook and other places. And of course, you could purchase my book, Tangent Dreams, high school football novel. Right now, nothing in the future right now is pertaining to monetizing this or Patreon or anything, but I do make my living selling books and pastoring a church. So if you could support through the books, that would be awesome. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to answer them. All right, it's the 27-minute mark. It's a long one on a Friday. Go check out From the Ram Cave. I'm Joe Tarosian, and we'll see you Monday.